Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief, brought to you every Monday to Thursday by these guys, Lay of the Land. Now, just a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the headlines. There will be no Israel Brief on Thursday. Tomorrow night marks the start of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. And here in Israel as well, we also observe 2 nights and 2 days. So there will be an Israel Brief tomorrow, and then we will resume as normal on Monday. I had to think, what were the days of the week? So thank you guys. I missed you yesterday, but I just want to thank you all for joining me on my media trip down south. A lot of observations. As you know, it wasn't the first time that I have been down south. I have been down several times before. In fact, I was in Kfar Aza, where I was yesterday, about 2 or 3 months after the attacks. And I'm glad that I went again yesterday, because when I first went, it was absolutely overwhelming. And I still have video footage that I took yesterday. But I'm glad that now, nearly a year later, I was able to go again and internalize knowing what I know now of what happened on that Black Sabbath. And a few interesting observations that I noticed about the foreign press. And to me, it largely explains why we see this reporting style that we do in the mainstream media. I didn't feel that they internalized what they were seeing. I think, and you could see the competing microphones in some of the interviews, I think for them it's a story. They wanted their sound bites. But for us in Israel, this is very, very personal. It felt a little bit invasive at times to have them there. And there were 2 incidents that really stood out to me. Well, actually 3. The first one is walking through Kfar Aza. One of the cameramen on our way out of the kibbutz was whistling. And I had to restrain myself from saying to him, this is holy ground. The soil still holds the blood of our brothers and sisters and children and mothers and fathers. It's not a place where you whistle. The other incident was at Kibbutz Nir Oz, being guided by Rita Lifshitz, who is the daughter-in-law of Oded Lifshitz, who is still being held captive. He is a man in his 80s. He is a man who every week would drive children from Gaza to Jerusalem as part of the organization Road to Recovery to get their chemotherapy and then bring them back to Gaza via the Erez crossing. And he is still being held captive. There is nothing left of their home. It is completely and utterly decimated. Nothing left. And one of the journalists said to the other, a little bit of destruction in this community, with a smile. And let me tell you something, I had to restrain my mouth, but I did shoot him a look that could have frozen the Negev desert. And the third, again, walking through Kibbutz Nir Oz, was every now and then you get a waft of the stench of death, even a year later. And as somebody was explaining to me today, that it can take decades for the smell to break up and go away. And every now and then you get this waft of the stench of death, which is very difficult to describe, but you know it exactly when you smell it. And one of the journalists from Germany didn't seem to be too perturbed. In fact, she kind of like took it as almost like the special effects of being there. And I wanted to say to them, this is holy ground, this is a holy place, this is not an amusement park. So kindly treat it with that. So those are my observations from yesterday. It was also day 360, which makes today 361. We're very close to the 1-year anniversary. But for us Israelis, we're still on the 7th of October, 2023. The kibbutzim are still frozen in time. We are still frozen in time. I don't know when we will take our first steps to healing. So let's take a look at those top stories. Let's take a look at those top stories. Sorry, I do have a few people trying to get hold of me. So let's take a look at those top stories, and we begin with Lebanon. Now, I know a lot of events happening this weekend, with the elimination of Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah. And as the Prime Minister said, he wasn't just a terrorist, he was the terrorist. So let's take a look at the events of the last 24 hours. And the IDF have confirmed that they have started on a limited, very, very targeted ground operation. Now, some of the mainstream media are saying Israel is invading Lebanon and Israel is storming into Lebanon, and I want to be very clear. The IDF have said limited ground invasion with specific targets. That's very different to the language that you're hearing in the media. And of course, the aim of this is to push Hezbollah north of the Litani River. That is part of UNSC Resolution 1701, which the international community, who have ignored that and failed to enforce that for now over a year, in fact for 18 years, are now saying to Israel, show restraint. We want to push them back, to stop them firing rockets towards Israeli civilian centers. Today we've had about 150 rockets fired at us, about 4 or 5 fired towards the center of the country and Tel Aviv. The IDF Home Front Command has expanded their guidelines and restrictions to include my area, Modi'in, which is in the center of the country and as far as Jerusalem. So it shows you that we're gearing up for a possible exchange of fires, and Hezbollah wanting to flex what's left of their muscles. But 2 Israelis injured today by shrapnel from the rockets, one of those rockets falling near Highway 6 or Route 6, setting fire to land. So we want to push them back, and we also want to attain that major war goal, which is to return our civilians to their homes in the north of the country. And let's talk a little bit about what happened this weekend, that incredible assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, who is a wanted terrorist not only for crimes he has committed against Israel, but also for killing Americans, French soldiers, the Amir bombing in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And if you follow Middle Eastern events, you would have seen celebrations across the region, including in Lebanon, Syria, for his role, the role of Hezbollah in the Syrian civil war, where hundreds of thousands were murdered, including tens of thousands of Palestinians, which nobody's talking about, and across Iran. So Israel effectively has eliminated the entire top Hezbollah command. And, you know, while Hezbollah is severely disabled, we want to finish the job and push them away from our borders. So we will be bringing you the updates on that there. In other news, when we turn to the south, and those of you who've watched the videos from yesterday could hear the bangs and the sound of artillery and maybe even planes at a certain stage while I was in the south. The Israeli Air Force struck the Deir Yassin school. It's an UNRWA school in Shujaya, also being used as a Hamas command and control center to launch attacks on Israeli civilians and soldiers. Again, it proves just how embedded these terrorists are in the civilian infrastructure inside of the Gaza Strip. And while we're on the subject of UNRWA has admitted that Fatih Sharif Abu al-Amin, a Hamas terrorist who was actually the head of their Lebanon command, was eliminated yesterday. That not only was he the principal for an UNRWA school, so he effectively was an UNRWA employee, but he was also head of the teachers union. And again, we have been speaking about UNRWA again and again and again throughout this war. You can see how the United Nations relief works agency responsible for Palestinian refugees, is fully embedded within the Hamas command and terrorist infrastructure. So the United Nations, and we heard the Prime Minister in his speech to the United Nations General Assembly on Friday say that the United Nations has become almost like a flat earth society, that it is embedded with anti-Semitism, and we can certainly see it throughout this war. And finally, yesterday, the Prime Minister recorded a video message to the people of Iran. So I'm going to read it to you. It comes courtesy of the Government Press Office. The Prime Minister says, I speak a lot about the leaders of Iran. Yet at this pivotal moment, I want to address you, the people of Iran. I want to do so directly, without filters, without middlemen. Every day you see a regime that subjugates you, makes fiery speeches about defending Lebanon, defending Gaza. Yet every day that regime plunges our region deeper into darkness and deeper into war. Every day their puppets are eliminated. Ask Mohammed Deif, ask Nasrallah. There is nowhere in the Middle East Israel cannot reach. There is nowhere we will not go to protect our people and our country. With every passing moment, the regime is bringing you, the noble Persian people, closer to the abyss. The vast majorities of Iranians know their regime doesn't care a whim about them. If it did care about you, it would stop wasting billions of dollars on futile wars across the Middle East. It would start improving your lives. Imagine if all the vast money the regime wasted on nuclear weapons and foreign wars were invested in your children's education, improving your healthcare, in building your nation's infrastructure, water, sewage, and other things you need. Imagine that. But you know one simple thing. Iran's tyrants don't care about your future, but you do. When Iran is finally free, and that moment will come a lot sooner than people think, everything will be different. Our two ancient peoples, the Jewish people and the Persian people, will finally be at peace. Our two countries, Israel and Iran, will be at peace. When that day comes, the terror network that the regime built in 5 continents will be bankrupt and dismantled. Iran will thrive as never before. Global investment, massive tourism, brilliant technological innovation based on the tremendous talent that exists inside Iran. Doesn't that sound better than endless poverty, repression, and war? From Qom to Isfahan, Shiraz to Tabriz, there are tens of millions of good and decent people with thousands of years of history behind them and a brilliant future in front of them. Don't let a small group of fanatic theocrats crush your hopes and your dreams. You deserve better. Your children deserve better. The entire world deserves better. I know you don't support the rapists and murderers of Hamas and Hezbollah, but your leaders do. You deserve more. The people of Iran should know. Israel stands with you. May we together know a future of prosperity and peace. And you can read a lot into the Prime Minister's words. Is this possibly a portent or a harbinger of things to come? Who knows? Only the Prime Minister and his security cabinet do. So, right, now it's time for the question of the day. It comes from Craig in Melbourne. Craig asks, and he says, why is the press in allied countries so hostile? Brilliant question, Craig. I have been wondering this myself, especially when I watch Sky News in the United Kingdom. Not Sky News Australia, they are phenomenal, but the BBC, Sky News, ABC in your country, and various others. And I think that there is first of all, an agenda at play. We know some of them are owned, like Sky is, or financed by Qatar, which is pushing this anti-Semitic, anti-Israel agenda. I also think that there's a problem with knowledge about the Middle East, our history, the history of Israel and the Palestinians across many, many news desks. And looking at how the journalists behaved yesterday, it's very, very apparent. However, what I've noticed, especially over the last 2 weeks, is that the tide is turning in public opinion, and more people are supporting Israel. More people are saying, Israel, get on with the job. We know you face threats on multiple borders. Get on with the job. We admire your country for fighting for its people. God bless your soldiers, and God bless the people of Israel. That is the message I'm seeing, and I only hope it filters to the news desks and the editors and the editors-in-chief. So that's it for today, guys. Don't forget to check out our website at www.layoftheland.online, our Facebook community at Lottel's site, our YouTube channel is at The Israel Brief, our Instagram at Rolene_Marks. We're on LinkedIn at Rolene Marks. Guys, you know I adore you. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. I will see you again tomorrow before we start the new year. Bye for now.